Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us again for Global Women Enrichment Podcast. It is always such a joy to come into your homes and to participate with you on your journey in life. Remember, we want to inspire women everywhere to be your maximum potential, to be everything that God has designed you to be. And this evening, we would like to talk a little bit about some questions and give some answers to some questions that some folks have been asking. And without further ado, I'm going to ask Venoria to share with us again the mission and vision. Believe it or not, a couple people have asked me, what is your mission and vision? What are you all about? How can we find out more information about Global Women Enrichment? So I'm going to ask her to share with you our website where you can go and get more information. Between our ladies, we'll share with you our email so that you can communicate with us. We invite you to send us questions, to ask us anything you want, suggest topics you'd like to hear. And I'm going to also ask her to share with us our mission and vision, our vision and mission of the Global Women Enrichment. Venoria?
Well, thank you, Dr. Brown. It gives me great pleasure to remind us and to remind you, our listeners, what our vision and mission basically is all about. So let's start with our vision. It is uniting women across age, race, religion, ability, and expression in the journey to self-actualization by reaching your full potential through becoming everything you are capable of being. And this ties into our mission, which is basically empowering women to be their best selves, knowing their worth, and shaping the path for future generations.
Thank you very much, Venoria, our distinguished leader. We thank you for sharing the mission and vision, and I'm going to ask Laura to remind us of how you can contact us.
So if you want to reach out to us and give us your thoughts and also let us know what you'd like to hear on future episodes, you can reach us at gwenrichment.com. There is our website, and you will have all of our contact information on there as well.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Laura. We invite you all to communicate with us. We want you to be a part of what we're doing in the podcast. Another question that has come in is, are we doing this live? Thank you for the question. We record our sessions, we meet, we spend a whole day together laughing and enjoying each other. And in this new season, we had the pleasure of meeting at Paola's house, and we had the real Haitian cuisine. It was delicious. So we meet this year, in this season, we'll be meeting for a long day, and we're doing recordings for 2 months at a time. And what we invite you to do is on the night of when the podcast airs, we invite you to communicate with us in the chat. So please get on the chat. Talk with us. We will be your host. We'll be happy to answer any questions you have there. We will also receive any comments and suggestions you may have for future podcasts. So that answers your question about whether these are recorded sessions or if they're live. So, we put a lot of effort into not making mistakes when we are doing the recordings. And we're so happy that you enjoy us and you've shared with us your pleasure in hearing us do these podcasts. It has been a joy to participate in these podcasts. Right, women?
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Okay. So another question that came in from one of our men. And one of the questions he asked was, how can men help us how can they enrich us? How can they add to this flavor that we're talking about, enriching women? How can men participate in that with someone they love who is female? Ladies, Paola, you have any ideas?
Um, of course, I don't have a man in my life.
That's okay. But what do you think?
But what I think is like I can empower myself, I can enrich myself, I can do all this. Of course, I have you ladies as great girlfriends that could, help me through the journey without a special person in my life.
Okay. So that's one perspective, Laura.
So, a perspective I share with Venoria is that we need to enrich ourselves. And one of our previous guests, Dr. Betsy Guerra, talked about that as well, is we have to be whole on our own. And in addition to that, love the enrichment of the men in our life. So whether it's someone you're dating, someone who you want to date, you're married to, a great way to add to the enrichment is to actually support those things that we as women want to do. So whether that's a hobby, whether that's a career, whether that's just, hey, I want to go spend a day at the beach. Really partaking and being present with us is important. And being present isn't always like, well, I'm going to be there right next to you, but I'm not even going to say a word, right? Yeah, that's not being present, and that's not contributing to the enrichment of that specific activity or whatever it is that the woman in your life wants to be doing. The other thing I will add to that is that you should ask. Ask the actual woman in your life. So while we may share as a wonderful women on this podcast what enriches us, ask the women in your life how they want to be enriched, because every woman is different. And the other thing is, don't just ask, well, how do you want to be enriched? And she's like, I don't know, figure it out. Probe, ask the question, because a lot of times women will say, well, if you knew me, you would know how I would want to be enriched. Yeah, women who are listening, give a little bit more. Share what you want. They're not mind readers, just like we are not mind readers, even though sometimes we think we are. Share. And the men, just ask probing questions. And don't start with the, well, why do you want that? Because you're going to put her on the defensive right away. Say, tell me a little bit more about what it is that you want. How can I contribute to that? So I could go on and on about this topic.
See, there we go. That's great. I want to say that my enrichment is quite like Paola said, where I have found over the years that I'm not going to wait on somebody else to enrich me. I certainly know how to live my life. And I will tell you that over the years, this summer, Lance and I celebrated 35 years of marriage, and it has taken a little bit of learning to let him be and let me be. So we have very individual lives, and then we come together and we are a family. But he knows I am going to go do my podcast. He's excited about it. I don't feel offended if he doesn't watch the podcast. When I need him to watch the podcast, I say, you need to watch the podcast. Thank you very much. And that's it. We don't worry about those things or how can he enrich me? We plan times every year when the family is the family. And outside of that, I have things to do and he has things to do. And we try to encourage each other and cheer each other on. In the summer, we talked about 5 love languages. It was one of the series in the sermon series in our church. And we talked again about whether or not we understood each other's love language. So I think that's an important thing to do, is to find out what the love language is, and that will help with the enrichment. So my love language is acts of service and quality time. So what that means is whenever he cleans the house for me, I'm in heaven, okay? If he washes the clothes, if he cooks dinner, all of that. I hope he's listening, okay? When he does those things, it gives me a sense of, wow, somebody cares. And then again, when he takes the time to let's be a family and talk, that's good, okay? His love language, affirmation. So I'm not very good at compliments, I must confess. But in order to give to my husband what he needs, I need to make the effort to say, hey, you did good. You're the man. Proud of you. That was awesome. You know, he's used to it as a musician, but as we get older, we stop doing it. So I've made a concerted effort to try and affirm him, and he loves to be touched. So if I'm walking past him, I try and touch his head or touch his hand. It means a lot to him. So I think we all need to find out what each other's love language is, whether it's a girlfriend or a male friend or a spouse or a husband, whatever. Find out what matters to them, not what matters to you. Because what you're doing, if I like balloons and you like flowers and you bring me flowers, I want balloons. So we really need to find out what the other person's love language is. What do you think, Venoria?
So, yes, I'll be the first one to say that I do not have a twin. So I am in agreement with everyone that you are to know how to enrich yourself, and that way you can enrich others, whether or not it's a spouse, it's a relative, it's a friend, it's a coworker. And I don't know if you guys recall, but I would hope that you do, because usually when I'm leading the sessions, I always try to remember to close out by saying, be empowered, encouraged, and enriched. And I know we don't talk a lot about our values, but one of Global Women Enrichment values is basically we are an organization, and our values coincide with what we believe to be gateways to living a fulfilled and enriched life. Some of these things involve love, joy, self-control, kindness, patience, integrity, and respect. So all of these things coincide with being enriched and living an enriched life. And the best way to be enriched is having self-enrichment.
Awesome. Thank you very much. I hope we have communicated with our male population. Thank you so much for that question. And now I'm going to ask Venoria to address you all on the big conference we're hoping to have, 1,000 Women Empowerment Conference. We are still pretty much in the pandemic, and I'm going to ask her to just give us an update on what she thinks regarding the conference.
This is something that we have been waiting and waiting and waiting. And I know sometimes we tend to get a little, discouraged because it was to happen since last year, March, and it did not take place because of the pandemic. Then we were planning to have it next year, but the Delta variant showed its ugly head. So we are taking it one day at a time. We are not quite sure yet when it will happen, whether or not it would happen maybe by the summer of next year, by the end of next year, or maybe 2023. One thing for sure, I will guarantee you that it will happen. And when it does happen, we are looking forward to seeing you all of you, our viewers, our listeners, and we want men, you can enrich us by supporting us. Come on out with your spouses, with your significant other, and be a part of Global Women Enrichment. And like Dr. Brown was saying, send us in your questions, send us in your views. We want to hear from the men as well, not just the ladies, So if you're a man listening out there, just be sure to join with your spouse and send us in your questions or your concerns. But the 1,000 Women Empowerment Conference is definitely going to take place, hopefully sometime near in the future.
Thanks very much for that. And what you, our listeners, can do while we're waiting for that wonderful day is spread the word, share the podcast with your circle of influence. Don't just share it on your smart device, but tell them how to find us and let them go and register and subscribe to our channel on YouTube and help us to build our listeners and our followers so that you can begin to create in your circle of influence a crowd to come. We would love to have 1,000 women or more at the conference, and we need you. How can you help us? We need you to help us build a following and begin to plan to make a trip, whether it's overseas, whether it's from another state, another country, wherever. We need you to come and be a part of this empowering, enriching, and encouraging group of women. It's going to be dynamite. And as our leader says, we invite men to participate also. Okay, in terms of any more questions, I'm going to ask the ladies to share with you what of our last 9 or 8 podcasts really stood out to you. Can you think of anything in our last 8 sessions that spoke to you or assisted you in your life? Quite like you, the viewers, are taking things from us and learning and enriching your life, we do the same thing. We listen to our podcast and we are enriched as we hear our speakers and as we share together. So, ladies, I'm going to ask you, Laura, maybe I'll start with you. Is there anything that stands out for you in the last 8 podcasts?
Oh my gosh, there's so much that stands out from, living a day at a time and fulfilling your purpose daily to Adriana Foster and her beautiful music and making a difference in the Dominican Republic. There's so much, but I think that the one that really stands out is when we were talking about breast cancer awareness. And the reason why that stands out so much is because it's our physical health, and it's something that so often goes undiagnosed because women don't know that they can, in the month of October, go out and get a mammogram for $50, and sometimes they can make arrangements if they don't have that money. And the guests that we have had on, and them sharing their stories about how they found it and how proactive they were in their own life in getting the help that they needed instead of just being a passenger on the road of life, to me really stood out.
Thank you. On that note, Derla Brown Libby, the older one who shared about her journey with breast cancer, she says to make sure we tell the listeners that when you're in a community and there's a new neighbor, everybody knows that there's a new neighbor. So she said, make sure to tell your listeners that they need to know their breasts. So you need to do that self-breast examination. And typically we suggest that you do that at the end of the menstrual cycle when all those hormones are quiet and not causing any lumps. And to do it then, so that if there's anybody moving into your breast tissue, you know the difference between your breast tissue and a potentially dangerous lump. So thanks for reminding us about that, Laura. We're finishing up October here with National Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And if anyone you still need to get that breast checked, and this message is tickling your ears, please go and do it. If you need help, give us a call. We'll be glad to help you find a place to have that done. Thank you. Paola, anything stood out to you in these last 8 sessions?
Absolutely.
Share with us.
We had Dr. Betsy talk about relationship. Although I wasn't part of it sitting at the table, but I listened carefully. And then there was so much to learn. And then the mental health aspect, when Terry? Yes, oh
Terry
my goodness, that blew me away. Talking about like children, adult, family, how it affects us. And then Venoya went into even mention celebrities that are part, that really, it's like everyone is in need of mental health. You don't need it because that's what get us out of, to make us better. Yes, depression, get out of depression and all that. And then my favorite was Madam Clark.
Yes,
Yes, Vanessa. To see like she's so young, only 33 years old, to been doing so much professionally in her life. And then community-wise, it's just like I wished our young people, young listeners could see, and then maybe, although she doesn't plan them, but at least I like to plan. I'm a planner. But to plan and then make sure things are, to do. And then you have a timeline when to do things and then how to plan your life to things to happen. Some people have the discipline and they don't need distraction. It will happen anyway, but others need to have discipline and to do. Yeah, so I enjoyed every single one of them. So yes.
I think the beauty, and I'm glad you brought up Vanessa, one of the things she said that is so beautiful was her goal was just to help people, period. And I love the way she said, if it is lending someone a pen Somebody needs a pen, she's helping someone. Or maybe it's to give somebody a seat. She's paying attention. How can she help people? It doesn't have to be elaborate or celebrity style. It's in your environment. What can you do to make a difference for somebody else? And she just blew me away with the concept that she doesn't plan anything.
I know.
She said, I don't know what my purpose will be tomorrow. And I'm like, really? Because I'm such a planner. I feel like I know the purpose of my life, but she's 33. I mean, maybe 20 years from now, she'll say something different because she'll be at a different stage. But it was so refreshing to see her fluidity and how she flowed with the plan of possibly, and she said it, the Creator, how God will purpose and move her. What will He have her to do tomorrow? And I think that was phenomenal. Mm-hmm. She was very refreshing. Thank you for having her come to share with us. That was awesome. And then in terms of Miss Betsy, always a pleasure to hear Dr. Betsy. And I was really impacted by humility, accountability, and reframing. I know all the words. I'm not good at being humble. When I know I'm right, I am not very good at trying to figure out why you did what you did. I'm just right. So that was a little eye-opener. I think women who are probably not as strong-willed as I am might feel a little intimidated by that. So I think we should encourage our men to step up with some of that humility, accountability, and reframing, and help our weaker women to be stronger. That's one way to enrich their lives, is not to be upset, but to have a conversation, to communicate. That's one of the things Dr. Guerra shared with us, is the need for communication. And I think when we do relationships too, we'll talk a little bit more about that communication. And then the last thing she shared with us was reframing, how something very negative can be taken and looked at from a different perspective, and we can see how we can use that to help each other. And then the concept of mental health. We need to be a part of removing the stigma of getting mental health. So I'm going to challenge you all out there listening to us. Examine your life, reflect, and if you need to get some mental help, we'll help you find a counselor. We know many. We've had a few come on here on the podcast. And if you just want to talk to somebody, let's do that. All right? Venoria, what stood out for you in these past 8 weeks?
I'll start first with Vanessa. Just her humility, because she has accomplished so much at a young age, and she's very humble about it. Sometimes some people accomplish one thing, and it's me, 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 me. And Paola had to step in. I saw Paola's facial expression, and she was like there saying, "Oh, Vanessa." Okay, so she just had to speak up and say, "Hey, I have to speak up on her behalf because she has done so much." So just to see such an accomplished person at such a young age and so humble about it, that was refreshing in itself. Terry, the mental health person. It's, when you hear about counseling, sometimes you don't think about even the kids being counseled. You usually think about just the adults. But it was refreshing to know and listen that when the kids get counseling, it's good to get counseling from early on, because that definitely prevent a lifetime of maybe real issues down the road. So that was also refreshing to hear about mental health, because for some reason, and especially in some culture, it's like a stigma. And then for men, you all don't come at me, but it is lots of men are afraid of getting counseling. They think it's something that is stigmatized, and they look at it negatively, So all of us could do with a little counseling here and there, because we all have issues that we are dealing with. Then we had Adriana Foster, lovely Adriana, and listening to her and her mentioning that she almost committed suicide. I mean, that really was, because usually you hear about people committing suicide, but you have somebody sitting right next to you and telling you that when they were 18, just a baby, they almost committed suicide. But the good thing is positive outcome. And now she is doing her motivational singing and speaking and all that. And I'm sure with that could help prevent others from going along that path of attempting suicide, because it is so prominent in young adults today. And the biggest thing for me was the cancer situation, with those two wonderful ladies sharing their testimony and their journey through cancer and overcoming it. I'm not sure, I don't remember the oldest one's name, Darla. And when she mentioned 911, that Jeremiah scripture, I mean, that did it for me. I mean, it was powerful. It was powerful. And they were able to impart their individual stories, so powerful. So that was a blessing in itself. And am I missing anyone? Oh, yes, I am. The very last one. Nicole. I mean, it's just, it just, you do think about these things sometimes, but again, to be sitting next to someone, a young girl, and she is part of this organization helping people just to get clean water. It's just unreal. And it was just empowering, to see that there are people, there are organizations that care, because we take a lot of things for granted, and something as simple as water, and having a bathroom that you can actually close, and have your privacy. It's just, we ought to be so grateful for everything that we have.
Well, and if we stop and think about all of the guests that we've had over the last 8 weeks, they've really enriched our lives.
Yes.
And each one of us can go one by one and talk about what we gained and enriched our lives with on each of them.
So, our dear listeners, you have heard so much from us today. We've answered some of the questions that were raised. We challenge you to go home and take a fresh look at your bathroom. Sit on your toilet and think about all the people who can't sit on one. They can't close a door. They can't turn on a tap. And give thanks for water. It's an important commodity. If you have any mental health issues, we invite you to seek out someone to get help. We're so excited about the Olympics that are past, and to Simone Biles and how she stood up for mental health and didn't let anybody beat her down. She didn't try to please anybody. She took care of herself and was able to come back and do a simple on the beam gymnastic, collect her bronze medal, and come home a champion. Okay? So I encourage you all to take care of yourselves. Until we see you again at Global Women Enrichment Podcast. Good night.